Welcome to The Debate. Usually when we talk about the future, we talk about, flying cars or AI. But today, we're looking at something far more personal and, frankly, far more radical. We are looking at the very real possibility that the deadline of death is becoming, negotiable. We're talking about the pursuit of extreme longevity. But I don't really want to talk about the biochemistry of a pill just yet. I want to ask the question that, it keeps me up at night. If we actually succeed, if we can double the human lifespan, does life lose its meaning?
It's the ultimate be careful what you wish for scenario, isn't it? I mean, we spend our whole lives fearing the end, but I'm beginning to suspect that the end is the only reason we actually get out of bed in the morning. If you remove that boundary, do you liberate humanity? Or do you just create a society of bored, anxious procrastinators?
See, I knew you'd go there. You're worried about the ennui of the immortal. I'm here to argue the opposite. I believe that extending our health span, and let's be really clear, I mean vibrant, healthy years, not just keeping a heart beating in a hospital bed. It offers this massive longevity dividend. We aren't just talking about more time. We're talking about a fundamental shift in how we connect, how we love, and how we solve problems.
And I'm going to take the position that finitude, the fact that your time is scarce, is the engine of your identity. I want to talk about the longevity paradox, this idea that in our obsession to preserve the self, we might actually dissolve it, that we risk creating a world that is, frankly, stagnant, risk-averse, and deeply unequal. A world where the old never step aside and the young, they never get a turn.
That is a dark picture, but let's challenge that immediate assumption, the one that says, getting old is miserable, so why would you want more of it? Because the data implies we have this completely backward. Have you looked closely at the U-bend of happiness?
You mean the research showing people get happier as they age? Yeah, I've seen it, but I always assumed it was a kind of survival bias. The grumpy ones just died off early.
Well, it's more profound than that. The Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen has spent decades studying this, and she found that emotional well-being actually improves significantly as we get older. It's counterintuitive, right? We think of aging as loss of mobility, loss of friends, but the data shows that older adults are less stressed, less angry, and more emotionally stable than 20-somethings.
Okay, but why? Is it just that they've given up on their dreams so they can finally relax?
No, it's what she calls socio-emotional selectivity theory. It's a mouthful, but think of it like this. When you're young, your time horizon feels infinite. So you're in information gathering mode. You put up with boring parties, you network with people you don't even like, you learn skills you might never use, all because, you might need it later. And that is an incredibly stressful way to live. It's full of ambiguity.
Right, it's the anxiety of becoming.
You stop focusing on what might happen in 20 years, and you start focusing on what feels good now. You prune your social network. You stop having coffee with that acquaintance who drains your energy, and you spend more time with your spouse or your best friend. You prioritize emotional satisfaction over information gathering. My argument is that if we can use biological interventions, things like rapamycin or metformin, to keep the body healthy while the mind reaches that state of emotional wisdom, we aren't dragging out misery. We are extending the happiest years of our lives.
Wait, hold on. You just walked right into the trap. You're praising the wisdom and emotional peace of the elderly, right?
Yes.
But by Carstensen's own definition, that peace comes specifically because they know time is short. The pruning of the social network, that focus on the now, that only happens because they see the exit sign approaching. It's like the airport gate effect. When you have 10 hours in a new city, you run around like a maniac trying to see everything. That's youth. When you have 45 minutes before your flight, you sit at the gate, buy a coffee, and call your mom. That's old age.
I see. I like that analogy.
But here is my worry. If you tell a 90-year-old, good news, we fixed your telomeres, you have another 100 years, you are essentially canceling their flight. You are throwing them back into the stress of the city. If the time horizon becomes infinite again, they might lose that emotional stability. They could revert to that anxious, ambiguous young adult phase, We could inadvertently create a society of 150-year-old adolescents constantly finding themselves, forever chasing the next credential, never settling into wisdom because there's always more time to do it later.
That is a fascinating psychological risk. You're saying wisdom is contingent on the deadline?
I'm saying urgency is contingent on the deadline. Look at someone like Viktor Frankl. He argued that meaning comes from the fact that we cannot do everything. If I can be a doctor and a musician and an astronaut and a farmer over the course of 400 years, then choosing one path loses its weight. The choice doesn't matter because I can just do the other thing next century. Frankl called it the imperative of urgency. If you remove death, you might just remove the compulsion to act. Why write the book now? Why apologize to your brother now? You have forever.
I think that's a very cynical view of human drive. It assumes the only reason we do anything is fear. But okay, let's talk about the tedium. This is the other big philosophical objection, right? The Bernard Williams argument.
The Alina Makropoulos case. It's a famous thought experiment. She's a character who lives to be 342. And Williams argues that eventually she just becomes frozen. She's bored. Not just Sunday afternoon bored, but existentially hollowed out.
Because she's done everything.
Right. It's the U2 problem. You know, the band U2?
Yeah.
They've been touring for 40 years. At a certain point, are they really creating new art, or are they just a cover band of themselves?
Yeah.
Williams argues that a human identity is constructed by a set of desires and projects. Once you fulfill them all, the you that existed just dissolves. If you live to be 700, the person at the end has no meaningful connection to the person at the beginning. You aren't extending a life. You're just restacking different lives on top of each other.
Have changed. The me of 20 years ago is effectively dead. And that's okay. I think the mistake Williams makes, and frankly, the mistake you're making, is assuming that human curiosity has a cap, that we are a bucket that just gets full.
You don't think we run out of steam?
I don't. The world is infinitely complex. You could spend 80 years just studying the history of jazz and not even scratch the surface. Then you could spend another 80 years on astrophysics. The longevity dividend allows for what we call a portfolio life. You don't have to be just one thing. You can master multiple domains. And if we can couple that with the emotional regulation of age, that grandmother energy of stability, we could have people who are incredibly wise and incredibly capable. That's not boring. That's a superpower.
A superpower? Or a delusion? You're talking about these multiple careers as if the transition is seamless. But let's look at the biological reality here. You can't just decide to live longer. You have to fight nature tooth and nail to do it. And this brings me to the cost of that fight.
You mean the cost of the research?
No, the cost to the living. We need to talk about the disposable soma theory.
Okay, let's unpack that, because it's a crucial concept for understanding why we age in the first place.
It's basically the rental car theory of biology.
Exactly. Think of your body like a rental car. Evolution is the rental agency. The agency only cares that the car runs well enough to get you to your destination, which, biologically speaking, is reproduction. Once you've passed on your genes, the warranty expires. Nature stops paying for the repairs. It stops fixing the DNA breaks. It stops clearing out the zombie cells. Why would it waste energy repairing a body that has already served its evolutionary purpose?
Right. So we are genetically programmed to fall apart. And your solution is to hack that system, to trick the body into repairing itself past the warranty date. But my question is, what is the daily price of that hack?
What do you mean?
I'm talking about orthorexia nervosa. We see it right now in the longevity community. To get that dividend you're talking about, people are turning their lives into spreadsheets. They weigh their food to the gram. They track their sleep architecture. They wear monitors that beep at them if their stress levels rise.
Data is useful, though.
But at what point does the optimization destroy the joy? Imagine you're at a dinner party. Everyone is laughing, sharing a bottle of wine, eating rich food. And there you are, the longevity seeker, sitting in the corner with your Tupperware of steamed broccoli because you're terrified of inflammation. You're measuring your blood glucose while everyone else is measuring their happiness. You might live to be 120, but you're going to be the most boring, lonely person at the funeral of all your friends.
Okay, that is a vivid image, and I admit neurotic wellness culture is a real problem. But that is not what the science recommends. In fact, if you look at the actual data on what predicts longevity, do you know what the top factor is? It's not kale, it's not cold plunges.
Let me guess. It's love.
It's interdependence, social integration. People with strong social ties have a 50% higher likelihood of survival than those with poor social ties. That's a bigger impact than quitting smoking. So the guy in the corner with the Tupperware, he's actually doing it wrong. He's spiking his cortisol through isolation. True longevity science, the kind I'm advocating for, actually points us back to the dinner party.
So you're saying the best anti-aging drug is other people?
In a way, yes. We are pack animals. Evolution built us to co-regulate. When I say we should extend health span, I'm not talking about creating solitary supermen. I'm talking about extending the time we have to be connected. If we can use things like rapamycin to dampen that biological noise of aging, the aches, the brain fog, the frailty, it actually frees us up to be more social. It's hard to go to the dinner party when you're in chronic pain.
I can concede that point. If, and it's a big if, the technology liberates us rather than enslaves us to a regimen. But even if we solve the boredom and even if we solve the isolation, we run into a brick wall that I don't think you can climb over.
Which is?
Stagnation. The scientific gerontocracy.
You're worried that the old will never retire.
I'm worried that new ideas will never be born. There's a famous saying, science advances funeral by funeral. I think Max Planck said that. The idea is that established scientists or politicians or CEOs don't change their minds when new evidence comes out. They cling to their theories. The only way the paradigm shifts is when that generation dies and a new generation who isn't married to the old ideas takes over.
So you're saying death is a feature, not a bug of progress.
Absolutely. Imagine if the physics department at a major university was still run by people from 1920. Imagine if the Senate was occupied by people born in 1850. If we radically extend life, we are cementing the status quo. We risk blocking the disruptive innovation that drives society forward. We create a world where the incumbents hold power for centuries.
I hear that, and it's a valid fear. But I think it relies on a zero-sum mentality, this idea that for a young person to succeed, an old person has to die. That's a very grim view of mentorship. Let me counter with the grandmother hypothesis.
This is the evolutionary theory?
Yes, humans are weird. We are one of the few species that lives long past our reproductive age. Why? Evolutionarily, it's because elders, specifically grandmothers, were essential for the survival of the tribe. They provided stability, they provided childcare, but most importantly, they provided knowledge. They knew which berries were poisonous. They knew how to survive the drought because they'd seen one 50 years ago.
Sure. In a tribe of 50 people, grandma is a library. But in a global economy?
It still applies. If we have a scientist who has 100 years of accumulated knowledge and they are physically healthy enough to keep working, they aren't just blocking the 20-year-old. They can prevent the 20-year-old from repeating the same mistakes. We are wasting so much human capital right now. We force people to retire right when they know the most, just because their bodies are failing. If we fix the body, we unlock that wisdom. It's not stagnation, it's accumulation.
That sounds lovely, but it ignores the power dynamics. The grandmother and the tribe shared her berries. The immortal CEO in 2050 is going to hoard his shares. And this brings us to the ugliest part of this debate, inequality.
The fair innings argument?
It's the biological stratification nightmare. Let's be real about who gets these therapies first. It's not going to be the working class. It's going to be the ultra-wealthy. And wealth buys time.
It always has to some degree. But this is different. This is compound interest on life itself. If a billionaire can live to 150, they can compound their wealth for an extra 70 years. They can consolidate power for generations. We wouldn't just have a wealth gap, we would have a biological caste system, the immortals versus the mortals. The fair innings principle says everyone deserves a reasonable shot at a life, say 80 years. If the rich buy 160 and the poor get 70, that is a recipe for revolution. It violates our basic sense of justice.
I agree. The inequality risk is massive. It is the single biggest political hurdle. But, and I want to be very clear here, that is an argument about economics, not biology. It's an argument about distribution, not the science itself.
You can't separate them.
We can, and we have. Look at vaccines. When they first appeared, they were scarce. They were for the privileged. But we didn't say, oh, this creates inequality, so let's stop making vaccines. We said, this is a public health imperative, so we must make them available to everyone.
Vaccines prevent the flu. This technology prevents death. The demand will be infinite, and the supply will be controlled.
But look at the cost of not doing it. Do you know what bankrupts healthcare systems? It's not the drugs. It's the slow, agonizing decline of aging. Alzheimer's, heart disease, stroke, these cost trillions. The longevity dividend isn't just emotional, it's economic. If we can keep people healthy and active until 95, we save trillions in healthcare costs. That makes this a public good. It gives governments a massive incentive to democratize it, just like they do with sanitation or basic immunizations. We can't let the fear of bad policy stop us from solving the greatest cause of human suffering.
I admire your optimism. I really do. But I look at the world and I don't see governments acting with that kind of foresight. I see a world where the rich build bunkers and everyone else fights for scraps. And if those rich people never die, the fighting never ends.
So, are we stuck? You think we're doomed to boredom and inequality, and I think we're on the cusp of a golden age of wisdom?
I think the truth is probably in the middle, as always. But I keep coming back to that psychological point, the deadline. Even if we fix the inequality, and even if we fix the body, I worry that a life without a deadline is like a story without an ending. It just rambles.
And I would argue that we are the authors of that story. We don't need a deadline to write a good plot. We just need imagination. If we have more time, we just need to get better at writing the next chapter.
I suppose we'll find out. Or at least our grandkids will.
Or us, if I'm right.
Touché.
So we'll leave it to you, listening to this. If I put a pill on the table right now that guaranteed you 150 years of good health, but you had to accept the risk of boredom, the risk of social awkwardness, and the risk of seeing the world change in ways you might not like, would you take it?
And what price? In the urgency of today, would you be willing to pay for tomorrow?
Thanks for joining the debate.